Today we're going to talk about Florida and Initiative 3 and their campaign to legalize adult use marijuana and some of the different players in there. So the campaign behind a marijuana legalization ballot measure in Florida released a new ad in support of Amendment 3 this week, arguing that cannabis currently available on the state's illicit market is dangerously unregulated. Most Florida marijuana is illegal, produced by criminals, and can be laced with dangerous drugs like fentanyl, a woman says, described in a campaign press release as a Florida mom and voter who believes adult Floridians deserve the individual freedom to consume safe, tested adult use marijuana. Titled, quote-unquote, Fact, the 30-second ad is set to air statewide across broadcast cable, streaming, radio, and digital platforms, according to the campaign Smart and Safe Florida. Millions of Floridians use marijuana. It's a fact, it says. Most Americans have access to legal marijuana that is regulated and tested for safety, but not Florida. Amendment 3, which will appear before voters in November, gives adults access to legal, safe marijuana and the freedom to make their own choices while generating billions for schools and police, it adds. Last month, the campaign released an earlier set of 4 ads supporting the legalization ballot measure. Kim Rivers, chief executive of the multi-state cannabis operator Trulieve, the main financial backer of the campaign, last month challenged surveys that have been released in recent weeks that showed flagging support for the measure, reiterating that internal polls show initiative passing with a comfortable margin, despite the steep 60% threshold required to approve a constitutional amendment in Florida. I want to take a pause right here and just say one thing. Obviously we love having support for an initiative or a state amendment to legalize cannabis, but it is really disappointing to see a representative of the legal industry perpetuating the completely asinine and false claim that unregulated marijuana potentially has fentanyl in it, because that's just ridiculous. And I truly think that, prior to Florida, we have passed legalization ballots in many, many states without using that kind of rhetoric, and I just don't think that's necessary here. And notwithstanding Governor Ron DeSantis' push against the proposal, Rivers said she's confident DeSantis will respect the will of the people and implement the legalization initiative if voters approve it at the ballot. A new outlet in the state recently reported that DeSantis is planning to veto a legalization bill that would ban consumable hemp-derived cannabinoid products such as Delta-8 THC, reportedly because he's hoping the hemp industry will help finance a campaign opposing Amendment 3. This is what I was alluding to earlier about how the whole hemp-derived cannabinoid industry, and whether it's illegal, whether it's not, has people falling on very unpredictable sides of this issue, and the fact that DeSantis is counting on the hemp industry to oppose the legalization initiative should tell you just what a shit show it is down there. Smart and Safe Florida separately announced in March that it was working to form a coalition of veterans to build voter support for the reform, and this campaign has since formally launched that initiative. DeSantis also previously predicted that voters will reject the marijuana initiative in November and argued that passage would reduce the quality of life in the state. With the campaign and companies backing the measure remain optimistic about its prospects this November, recent surveys continue to raise questions about that possibility. For example, a survey that was done for the Florida Chamber of Commerce by Cherry Communications found that 58% of Florida voters likely back the measure, compared to 37% who oppose it and 5% who are undecided. As Rivers pointed out recently, however, the Chamber has actively opposed the initiative. There's a lot more about some of the polling and expectations. Obviously both sides are presenting their own numbers, whether it's the campaign or the initiative office, or whether it's people like the Chamber of Commerce that are opposed to it. Both sides, it seems it's right around the 60% threshold. And just a reminder, it's more than 60% instead of 50% because Florida has a rule that constitutional amendments must get a 60% supermajority to pass. So that's why everyone's focusing on that 60%. But I guess we'll see how this plays out. We'll see what kind of money is being poured into this initiative, who's funding it. But beyond that, this is Sohum with High at 9 News. Thanks to Marijuana Moment for covering this article, this story. And let's kick it back to the whole team and see what everyone else has to say.
It's heating up. It's heating up down in Florida.
It's getting spicy.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Ron DeSantis,
politics
man,
makes strange bedfellows.
I told you.
Ron
He's all
DeSantis
angry.
is taking a step back in his high heels, his platforms, and letting the hemp industry and the cannabis industry duke it out, huh?
Yeah,
Yes.
man.
And
I called this. I called this before he even exited the presidential race. He's going to be all bitter, and he's going to come back and try to stomp out this cannabis movement. And he's in true to form. He's doing just that. It's just interesting to hear all this going down, and also I can't wait to see them start to bring up the backstory, because Kim Rivers is the only reason he became governor of Florida in the first damn place.
Ooh, spicy.
no. There's a lot more to that story than just that.
We covered that damn story, Jason. The whole backstory behind that shit. Kim Rivers and them funded that shit and got him on Donald Trump's radar. Donald Trump ended up endorsing him, and then he became governor.
Mhm.
That was the story.
There's
I
some more to
remember.
it than that too. Or to it.
Mason seems to forget.
Yeah, it was the Republicans do.
never.
Right?
Well, what are you
We're
talking
elephants.
about?
We never forget.
That's the irony.
That's the irony.
Hold on, let me ask the elephants behind me. Yeah, they don't forget. But listen, in this situation, there has been a ton of money poured behind this ballot, and there's been issues with the ballot. I'll just say that, or ballot initiative. The supermajority is going to probably pass, and the situation is that it's not the greatest piece of legislation. So you're always on the fence with these, right? It's because, like, as an advocate, I want cannabis to be legalized everywhere. Straight up. Period. I want period. Right? But then we get these situations where the bills are crafted in ways that are exclusionary or possibly create more prohibitionist situations, and they're not the greatest type of bills, right? So it puts you on the fence as an advocate to say, okay, do we push forward this to get the progress, the incremental progress and ugly incremental progress, in order to fix it on the back end? Or do we blow the whole thing up and say, nah, we ain't going anywhere, let's go until we get it how we want to? Mm-hmm. You know, in a democracy, maybe the prior works a little better than the latter. I'm not sure.
I want them to use
Political scientists are going to be studying this forever, because we're now, 12 years since Colorado first said, let's, do this out in the open, wide open, legally. And every place you see, the powers that don't want this to work have drugged their feet, caused problems all along the way. Then Kevin Savet's stupid ass pops up every once in a while, tries to scare people. And we still haven't figured this out, because even if they pass this, what we found out with 64 in California is that it can be slow walked to the point where the industry crashes. No one wants to talk about the law enforcement dollars that you save when you don't have to go out and enforce these stupid ass laws, and you could actually then maybe put some money in your pocket. But the cops don't want this to go away, despite that there are numbers in them that just don't want to be going around talking with pot anymore. They know that there's a flow of money coming in, and the policymakers want that money to keep coming, and they just like the blender to keep going. We can't get shit done as long as we're all fighting and pointing fingers at each other.
And I mean, there's an example of this having played out, right? Ohio, I think a few years tried to pass an adult use initiative where somehow in the wording they'd essentially given the licenses to specific, like, 10 or 15 groups off the bat, and one of them was famously Nick Lachey, and that's where it got a lot of attention. But that initiative failed, and now we see, I'm not going to say Ohio's legalization now is perfect, but I think they got a slightly better version of it because that initial initiative was rejected.